There's honestly two things I can't believe. First of all, how busted these new commanders are. Second of all, the fact that I predicted almost exactly the sorts of things we would get on these commanders. And then thirdly, okay, there's a third thing. Of course I was traveling. At Blizzard, of all places, I was at Blizz HQ when the new commanders dropped. So this video is a little bit late because I was actually at Blizzard headquarters. Now I'm back home. And here we are talking about these insane new commanders. And I had footage, assuredly up on screen, of this guy over here who does ridiculous amounts of the equivalent of instant proc area of effect damage. Now, his kit is unquestionably the most complex kit we've ever gotten on a commander in the history of this game. And you do, in fact, need a certified PhD in the School of Rockology in order to actually understand how to interpret the skills on this commander, okay? And it's funny because, as I mentioned, like, I was not able to record a vid until much later than I would normally like. By the way, use the timestamps. If you're subscribed, you can jump ahead to whatever part you'd like. But, you know, I woke up at, like, 5 a.m. California time to catch my flight. And I messaged Omniarch, and I was like, hey, what do you think of the new commander? Like, and he said something, you know, like, oh, there's these things that I missed that I would put into my vid. I was like, oh, what were they? This commander is so complicated. It is, bro, whew. But don't worry, we'll break it down. Shout out to Omniarch who even after pointing out the things that he'd found confusing, I still got crazy confused about them and misinterpreted them. And then I sort of figured it out, and then also other people confirmed it. So here we go, the new commander. What the hell does he do? Well, he consumes rage instead of using rage when you reach a full bar. In other words, he does his active skill when you've consumed 1,000 rage from all of his other skills and things that he does. It's weird. It's different. We'll talk about it. All you need to know is that his active skill adds this effect called the Eternal Emperor. And for the duration of that effect, which is 10 seconds, whenever their troop deals damage with a basic attack from the second skill, you also deal 60% of that damage to 5 other nearby enemy troops. Okay, so the commander's actually centered around this skill over here. Funny enough, it's not the first skill. This is kind of the most important one, but, well, we'll talk about that, okay? So this Eternal Emperor effect is going to make it so Iron Pierce's Bronze does a bunch of AoE damage too. So what the heck is Iron Pierce's Bronze? Well, whenever this commander's troop launches a basic attack, it'll spend 100 rage. See, this gets weird. This talks about this rage consumption effect we had up above. So you consume or spend 100 rage. You're not going to trigger this if you don't have enough rage. To convert the damage you would have dealt from your basic attack. That's the damage you deal when you directly target something. Okay, you convert that damage into a damage factor. Okay, so now we're doing skill damage. Direct damage equal to 100% of their troops' basic attack damage factor. Now, for those that don't know, a normal attack is comprised of a basic and a counter. A basic is 200 damage factor, a counter is 200 damage factor. And factors are based on the size of your army. I told you you needed a degree. Here we are. You're going to get your degree by the end of this video, okay? So, all that to say, every single second when you're targeting something and connecting with that target, you're launching a basic attack. You're going to spend 100 rage if you have it. You're going to convert that damage into skill damage, which is direct damage. And by the way, if this active skill is running, Eternal Emperor, then you're going to be doing AoE damage as well, which is pretty cool. So you've got your basic attacks being turned into skill damage. And then if the Eternal Emperor is running, that turns into AoE damage from this effect. Okay, cool. In addition, 20% march speed, 30% defense, and if you're only archers, 20% health. Wow. Wow. This skill, it's got a lot, bro. It's got a lot. Degree of rockology, okay? Now, it gets more complex, but don't worry, we're breaking it all down. Now, Thunder Shakes the Earth. If this commander's troop is in the field and has been outside your city for 10 seconds, you get the Eternal Emperor effect for 8 seconds. So you don't even have to use this sort of first skill in order to get Eternal Emperor. You're going to get that right from the get-go. So from the second you connect with an enemy, you're going to have Eternal Emperor, assuming you've been out of your city for 10 seconds, so no cheeseburgering. You're going to have Eternal Emperor. Your basics are going to turn into direct damage, You're gonna then do AoE damage in accordance with Eternal Emperor. Cool, okay. Seems pretty good, right? But there's more. So you get the Eternal Emperor effect for 8 seconds whenever you enter combat, and that can trigger only once every 60 seconds. So you're starting the fight with this, and if you have a downtime between fights, you get it back. Now, whenever their troop deals direct damage with Iron Pierces Bronze or the Eternal Emperor effect, you're going to spend rage, 20 rage. So we're consuming even more rage here, to deal extra damage to all those targets and drain their rage. 10 rage from them and 200 damage factor. Now, if this commander wasn't complicated enough, on top of all this, we got a new effect called Waning. Waning makes it so that after this effect triggers 2 times in a single second, every subsequent trigger, that second deals 25% less damage than the last, down to a minimum of 25%. So you're going to do lots of small amounts of damage to like everything around you. So just to run back what we have so far, okay? If you had this commander and all these skills we've covered so far maxed, okay, you're going to leave your city. You're going to get the Eternal Emperor effect the moment you enter into combat. Your basic attack is replaced by direct damage. That, because of Eternal Emperor, is going to turn into AoE damage, which is disgusting. And over here, okay, that damage is going to start then draining their rage, consuming your rage, and doing a bunch of damage factor as well. Okay, sure. It's complicated, but it is cool. Onward. Valor beats despair. If this commander's attacking a field troop, and they're the primary commander, so this commander's got to be the primary. Let me just throw it. He's got to be the primary in today's world of commanders. You get 500 rage upon entering combat. So you're going to have enough rage to consume for all this draining stuff and all this what's it called? Iron Spear, Iron Pierces Bronze. So all these effects that consume rage, you're going to have the rage to do it. All right, that's what's going on here. Of course, we're not done. You also take 10% less normal damage. Let's just counter the infantry for a second, because smite damage is a form of normal damage. Whenever their troop takes direct damage, smite damage, or combo attack damage with 300 plus damage factor, you spend 40 rage. This won't trigger if you don't have enough rage to reduce that damage by 40%, and that can trigger a total of 6 times per second. Now, each enemy troop can only make you trigger that effect once in a single second, but you can dramatically reduce your damage. You know, look, if you're subscribed to the channel, you know I made a video talking about how archers would be made great again. And I said there's a couple things they'd need to do. One of them is instant proc damage, which this guy is basically 100% instant proc AoE damage all the time. Disgusting, okay? But he also mitigates a ton of damage, and he's got march speed, defense, and health. It's all the things. And it's exactly what I said, where I indicated they're not going to put debuffs on these commanders. They're not going to give debuffs to enemies because they want to push the punch and make this archer trade positive. We are making archers trade positive again. I hope you like my passion. Yep. And, by the way, there is an expertise skill. The expertise skill is making it so that the skill you had over here that makes it so you enter combat with the Eternal Emperor effect, instead of being 8 seconds, it's 10. The drain costs you now 25 rage instead of 20, but you drain 15 rage off your enemies. When I say drain, okay, when they say drain, that means you take the rage off your enemies. Okay, you are pulling rage off of the enemies around you. That is disgusting. Oh, and the damage factor goes up to 250. So, yeah, this commander is certifiably busted. Okay, this is going to be insane. It is doing basically exactly what I said a new archer would need to go and do. The only thing that's caught me off guard here is the fact that they have not pushed a damage over time synergy. They have not pushed out a new formation that enhances damage over time, which I definitely was expecting. But don't worry, we'll get there. We'll get there, because this is the open field commander, okay? Now, we need to talk briefly about the rally commander. Before we come back, we talk about some combinations, okay? So Shapur is the rally commander. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Archer conquering skill. And I said that the way you push more damage is by making that damage happen over time. You can put more factor onto a commander. So what does this guy do? Well, he deals damage to the target troop every second for 4 seconds. It's damage over time, baby. Now, it is not a debuff onto the enemy, I think. I think it is a buff onto his own army. So he uses his active skill, and that makes it so that for the next 4 seconds, in each second, you do 800 damage factor. Oh, and by the way, if the target has less than 500 rage, they can't get shield effects for the next 2 seconds. Now, look, I don't know why specifically we're countering the shielding effect of infantry. I get that it does counter infantry, but I felt like echelon formation, not echelon, hollow square formation had, I mean, maybe it needed a hard counter. Maybe hollow square is actually the underutilized beast and Martel is just too good. Honestly, I would believe it. So anyways, this to me, let's assume very, very clear design intent. This to me says that the developers feel that shielding was too powerful and they had to not only address infantry, but specifically the shielding aspect of infantry is what they wanted to counter, because that's what you get here. So Hera, Martel, Gorgo does shields, Yasu does shields, like all the Inf garrisons right now are doing shields. Yep, that is what it is. Now the second skill, the Humiliation of Rome, savage name for a skill, by the way. This commander's archers get 20% march speed, 20% health. Whenever they take damage, they have a 25% chance to gain 30% attack for 3 seconds. If you're getting swarmed, I mean, that's just going to pop off. If they're leading a rally, their archers also gain an extra 20% march speed. What a funny addition. March speed when you're rallying is certainly a funny addition. But okay, next skills. Whenever this commander's troop deals skill damage, it has a 20% chance to inflict the following effects for 3 seconds. Now remember, you're doing skill damage every second for 4 seconds just from this. So you're going to have a lot of ways to trigger the Blessed by the Atash skill, which makes it so that the target cannot receive temporary health buffs, and the target deals 20% less normal damage. Now, as a skill, this feels not very strong to me. I mean, when these effects are all valuable to you, they're good, but like, I don't know. It's like very specifically dealing with temporary health buffs and also smite damage. Okay, go on. So stout walls. What do we got here? If the commander is leading a rally, whenever the rallied army grants a buff, it has a 50% chance to gain 100 rage. Wow. So whenever the rallied army grants a buff, to me, this indicates a direction of a pairing, with it, which is Ashurbanipal. Ashurbanipal makes it so that every time you use an active skill, he also buffs you. But in addition, I believe that this skill over here would qualify as a buff to their own army, their active skill, so that for the next 4 seconds, they do this effect. So also, here's a buff effect. Whenever their troop takes damage, has a 25% chance to gain 30% attack. So we have several ways to get buff effects built in here. You also gain a 30% bonus to skill damage for 3 seconds. So this thing has a built-in rage and skill damage boost engine based off of gaining buffs, but it's only a 50% chance to trigger, and it has a 4-second cooldown. So, you know, you could have the primary commander trigger this, and then you're not going to get its trigger again when the secondary commander uses their active skill because it's still on cooldown. All right. So very powerful, in my opinion, overall in dealing with infantry, which is like, yeah, I mean, the thing an archer rally probably ought to be able to handle, right? If this commander is leading a rally attack, whenever the rallied army deals damage, it has a 15% chance to deal additional damage every second. Now, here's the additional damage. This is what I thought these commanders would be all about, was damage over time. I am shocked that damage over time is not more of what these archers are doing. I basically can't predict what's coming next in this game. Well, actually, that's not true. There's things I predicted and things I didn't predict. What I didn't predict is that we would have so little of this damage over time. I really thought they'd push DOT, give us a new formation. It enhances DOT, but whatever. DOT stands for damage over time. So anyways, so what does this do? It is a 15% chance to deal additional damage every second for 1 second to 5 enemy troops near the target, damage factor of 200. See, this is funny. It's additional damage. This actually isn't a damage over time. Here I was talking about damage over time. It's in the next part. If they aren't leading a rally attack, whenever their troop deals additional damage, it is a 15% chance to deal additional damage every second for 2 seconds. There it is. To 1 enemy troop near the target, damage factor 200. So, it ain't much damage factor, but you should get a bunch of chances to trigger that from the active skill on this commander. Anyways, I'm sure there's a lot more to process here. I am pretty sleep deprived from the last couple days, but what I will say is extremely surprising to me is that we know from Sargon that this might be a viable commander in the open field, but I don't expect it to be a particularly strong open field commander. I mean, don't get me wrong, like 3,200 damage factor on an active skill is insane, except your enemy's probably just going to walk away from you and you're going to lose seconds of this buff to yourself where you would have done 800 damage factor, but you're not connecting with an enemy, and so it'll just expire. I'm genuinely pretty shocked that this archer was not open field viable. Like, I would have bet so much money that in order to make archers great again, you'd see both of these archer commanders be open field viable. I am genuinely deeply surprised that that's not the case. And the thing that's so wild is, like, how would you have done that with damage over time, right? That thing I suggested. Because then, if this was not a buff to himself, and instead it was a debuff to the enemy, then as soon as it triggers, yeah, you don't get all 3,200 damage factor in the first second, but like, you hit them with the dot, and then they just bleed out, baby. So anyways, that's not how this commander works. I am surprised by that, but I'm sure there's a very intentional reason, and I do like to read into the design of things. Obviously, this is like something that I find very entertaining, and it's part of the reason you're probably subscribed to the channel. But I think that the fact that this damage is over time indicates to me, in fact, they do not want this commander to be used in the open field. Because you would never put this style of damage on a commander if you want them to be used in the open field. After Sargon, I have learned my lessons and licked my wounds, and it's like, okay, I understand. Anytime you see this now, it does not matter how high the factor is. You just have to assume that most of the ticks of this damage are not going to connect. So do I think this commander is open field viable? Probably not. What do I think the rally is likely to be? Without thinking about it overly much, I think it's this commander and Ashurbanipal. I think they have some minor synergies. I think it's good enough. I think they're both rally commanders. I think that's where that's going to land. Which brings us to this guy over here. What are we doing with him? Well, he's an AoE damage dealer. He's not for rallying, okay? He's not for rallying. So the thing that I think you do with him is you pair with huge skill damage enhancement. So the obvious choice is going to be Zhuge Liang. Okay, obviously. Generates rage, has a ton of powerful effects, boosts your attack. He doesn't have any attack. Yeah, for very obvious reasons. This commander, Zhuge Liang, if you're making only 1 archer march, has got to be the way to go. Now, if you're going to 2 archer marches, okay, and I'll make a different video going more in depth on this, but if you're making 2 archer marches, I don't think you want to split Zhuge and Hermann Prime. I think they're so good together that you don't want to mess with that incredible synergy. And I actually think, unironically, that perhaps you bring Yisong into the mix to pair with this guy. Why is that? Well, Yisong's 4th skill is going to boost your skill damage by 50%. His museum buff is more skill damage boost. His 2nd skill, assuming that you technically, with Irons pierces bronze, you are still doing basic attacks and can trigger the attack and the rage from Yisong. Yeah, Iron pierces bronze. If that all works together, dude, I'm telling you, the Yisong is going to be gross with this. Sure, you're going to miss out on march speed. It's going to suck. It's true. But archers are in a weird spot. This guy's going to pop off. How do you make him pop off? Well, gosh, instant proc skill damage is really good. Well, he's got tons of that. He does it literally every second instead of an active skill, basically. And it's AoE. All you need to do is enhance that damage. Literally, Isong is like a stat stick, which is weird for Isong to be in that position, but like, oh, he also does circle AoE. Okay, cool, right? But like, that, unironically, we are so freaking back, baby. Archers are back. Isong is back. These commanders' kits, well, his kit is, I think, the most complicated in the game. But it's kind of like, okay, once you understand it, you probably wouldn't pass a test, but you get the gist. I wouldn't pass the test, which is funny because I like really thought about this a lot. But he's going to make it so that you get the Emperor effect. You replace your basics with skill damage. Now a higher percent of your total damage is skill damage. Oh, and now you're doing AoE damage. Oh, and now you're draining enemy rage. Okay. And you're doing even more skill damage for it. Like that's what he's doing, right? That's the thing that he is doing. And I actually, while I think it is important to have rage to consume, I don't think he's going to be rage starved if there are many enemies nearby. I think you're going to be big chilling. Like, I actually think you're big chilling. And the more you're getting hit, the more mitigation you'll have, and the more this guy's going to pop off, yoinking rage and doing damage. So, like, obviously the best case scenario is that he's not targeted. If he's not being targeted, then in those situations, having the rage gen is going to be really nice. For accessories, I think I am going to stick with a Horn of Fury. But instead of Ring of Doom, I may actually dust it off. Let me pull this up. Check it out, baby. The Pendant of Eternal Night. Did you even know this was in the game? Boost your skill damage by 5%, man. So cool. Actually seems really good. And you know the funny thing about this is that, you know, like 4+ years ago when this dropped in game, I said this, and it's funny, like, pat myself on the back, I guess, for being right about this, but I said that the thing that makes skill damage enhancement good is when you hit lots of things with skill damage. The way you do that is with area of effect damage. So a double AoE combo, especially one doing as much area of effect damage as I think we're going to get out of the new commander, the Emperor, plus the fact that he's replacing basic attacks with skill damage. Bro. Yeah, I think unironically Pendant of Eternal Night will be really good there, which is also a very compelling design paradigm wherein you've got the new accessory for Smite and the new accessory for combo, and this will be your sort of accessory for the skill damage, okay? And by that I mean, right, the hilt for Smite and the saddle for combo. Now, how good those are, that's a different sort of question entirely, but at least I like the design symmetry of having things for each of these different formations. I suppose a lot of people instead for Smite would look to the Greatest Glory as the better comparison point because it's 5% normal and here is, 5% skill. Technically, combo attacks are normal attacks, so you also could look at Greatest Glory there, but topic for a separate video. You enjoyed this one? Throw a like on here, subscribe. I think that these new archers are going to pop off. I also think, and you heard it here first, that an artifact with combo attacks giving you more basic attacks could be really busted. And specifically, like, the new... This is so nuts, but, like, the new archer, okay, the Emperor, plus you flip over... I know this is going to be weird, but you flip over Liu Che, okay, and what's this over here? Oh, it's a combo attack now. And you gain a basic attack worth of rage. I guess we'll have to look into and test how exactly the combo attacks work with the archers. I don't know. But that could be pretty nutty if that does what I think it might do, but I'm tired and I'm not sure. All right, enjoy the video, throw a like on here, subscribe. I appreciate you guys. It has been a crazy couple days at Blizz HQ, and I can't wait to talk about what I was doing, which is coming in a separate video. All right, until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Oh, and do me the favor, of checking out the predictions I made for archers. Because, like, I think I was pretty bang on for a lot of it. Watch the vid over here. You tell me, how did I do?